Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey there, peeps! Today we're going to take a look at Orléans, the deluxe edition from DLP Games and Tasty Minstrel Games. Now, DLP had previously released the basic, I guess, quote-unquote, version of this game at Essen of 2014, and so it had been available for a while, but Tasty Minstrel picked it up and blinged it out with this big deluxe version with nice wooden components and metal coins and nice thicker cardboard, things like that, and also wooden discs for the workers instead of cardboard discs. But the gameplay remains the same. You and the other players are trying to build up your area around the city of Orléans by getting new workers with those discs representing different types of like knights and monks and craftsmen and things like that. And when you take these workers, you put them into a bag and then you draw them every round. So this is essentially a deck building game. It's actually more specifically a bag building game. So you're building up your engine of different workers that you can use in order to go to different areas and get goods by shipping and building outposts and just getting other types of different buildings that you can utilize to get more points. So it's sort of a point gathering game from a bevy of different sources. Let me go ahead and give you a brief look at how the game is played as well as showing off the new components. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think. Okay, I'm going to give you a brief look at the Orléans Deluxe Edition, and I'm going to go over all the game as well, but it is worth noting that the Deluxe Edition, gameplay-wise, is exactly the same, but the components are a lot nicer. Instead of cardboard tiles for a lot of the different things, you instead have nice wooden tiles, for instance, for all the goods, and for all of the follower discs that are in the game. Those are also wooden. You do have to put stickers on either side of them because the other ones were printed cardboard, but it's a minor inconvenience, but I think it looks a lot nicer. You also have the technology tiles here, all the other spare goods. These tiles are going to be the same, but you also have nice metal coins for the currency in the game, and I believe the player bags are a lot nicer than they used to be. I might be wrong on that, but they also have fifth player components, so that's definitely something to note for people who are into playing with the maximum player count. Now, the goal of Orléans is to have the most points by the end of the game. The game is going to last for 18 rounds. You're actually going to keep track of the rounds with these different event tiles that you'll randomize at the top of the board, although you're always going to start off with the pilgrimage tile. We'll get back to that in a few minutes. At the end of 18 rounds, whoever has the most points is the winner. Points are going to be gained in three different ways. One is with coins. Coins, which you'll start off with 5 of, are straight one-to-one conversion. Every coin is a point. Then you have goods. Goods are going to be worth a varying amount of points depending on what type they are. So brocades are 5 points. That's the most expensive. All the way down to wheat, which is only worth 1 point. And then everything else like wine and such is everything in between. So all of those goods you manage to hold on to the end of the game are going to be worth points as well. Straight up points. The last thing is more of an equation. And this has to do with these little houses that you have, which are actually trading posts. And citizens, which you may gain during the course of the game. Those are going to be sprinkled throughout the board in different areas, and there's always one extra that's going to go to the person who's built the most trading posts at the end of the game. And then it's also going to have to do with where you are on this track, which is called the development track. Along the development track, there are stars with numbers, and you are going to have a cube at the start of that track, and you'll be moving down it during the course of the game. Wherever you end up, either on or past a star at the end of the game, that's the number you're going to use for the equation. The equation is number of trading posts plus number of citizens times whatever number you got the highest at. So if I got all the way up to 6 on the track, that would be 6 times the number of trading posts plus citizens. Then I add those points to my coins, into my goods. That's my final total. Whoever has the highest score is the winner. Now, every player is going to get a bag, and they're going to get a number of different trading posts. This is actually the first player marker, where I stuck it in front of myself. You'll get 5 coins. You'll get all these different cubes that you put on the start of each of these different tracks. And you're also the merchant meeple, which I mentioned before, which will all start off in the same city of Orléans. And then each player is going to get the same set of 4 starting followers, and they all have different colored bands signifying which color they're for and signifying that they are starting followers, which can be important for some things that happen during the course of the game because you're never allowed to permanently lose your starting followers. But in any case, you'll start off with a farmer, a boatman, a craftsman, and a trader, and you may get more of these during the course of the game. You probably will. And in most rounds, you're going to draw these followers from your bag. Since you only have 4 now, and that's what your hand limit, or that's how many you draw every round is, you just put them out on your board right away at the start of the game. In subsequent rounds, however, you have to draw them. And that's because you're going to be gaining more followers from the stock. And anytime you gain a follower, it immediately goes into your bag. Then, at the start of your round, when you draw tiles, or draw followers, however many that might be, because you may be able to draw more, you randomly draw them from your bag and then put them back down into your what's called the market area, and then that signifies the different followers you'll be able to use during the course of the game. Those followers are used to activate actions. All these different spots on your personal player board, and again, every player has the same board, has different action spots. In order to activate those actions, you need to have the right allotment of followers. So in this case, a farmer, a boatman, and a craftsman. Whereas if I wanted to activate the scriptorum, I would need a knight and I think they're called scholars. Whereas I wanted to activate one of these different actions, as you can see, it's all going to be different allotments of followers in order to activate those. And you don't have to put every single person there in order to activate it. You can say, well, next, I don't have everyone I need to activate the castle now, but I'll put my trader here so that hopefully next round I'll get the farmer and boatman I need in order to activate that action. You can also choose not to put anything out at all and keep them in your marketplace instead of putting them back into your bag or using them somewhere else. In any event, what that all means is that this is essentially a deck building game, but more specifically a bag building game. So everyone starts off with the same weak allotment of followers, but you'll gain more, get better, maybe weed out certain followers you don't want as the game progresses, and so on. So the easiest way to explain the game is just to go through the different phases. You always start off with phase 1, and whoever has the starting player marker, which will pass left as the game goes on every round, is going to flip over the top tile off the stack of event tiles, and that is the event that you have to deal with for this round. Now, in this particular case, it's a pilgrimage, which you always start off with, and there's 3 of every tile in the game, so there's more pilgrimages as well. Now, it is worth noting that if it was a good or bad tile that actually had an effect on gameplay for this round, it wouldn't happen right away. Instead, it doesn't resolve until the next to last phase of the round, right near the end of the round. So you have the entire round of action phases in order to cope with whatever the effect might be. So, for instance, let me just draw one and see what it is. Like, this is a harvest tile. This is a bad one because it says that every player has to give up a good in their inventory, of their own personal inventory, or else lose 5 coins. So that gives you the whole round, essentially, to work up to that if you don't have a good to give away, if you don't want to give up your 5 coins. Now, here I'll also note that if at any point during the course of the game you cannot pay the coins necessary to pay for one of these types of event tiles, you have to be affected by torture, which sounds bad, but really all it is in game terms is that if you can't give up coins, then you're going to have to give up something else, whether it's a trading post you've built, whether it's killing a follower from your bag, so on and so forth. You always have to meet your debt obligations. Let's take a look at a few other tiles. Here's a good one, income. Basically, this says that every player gets a number of coins equal to wherever they are on the development track. So you have some chances to work up to that before it actually happens. There's another income. Another harvest, all lumped together. There's this one is called the trading day. So essentially, you get a number of coins equal to however many trading posts you've built when you get to that phase. And so on and so forth. Oh, actually, let me see if I can find another one. Oh, hey, here we go, right there. The plague. This one's really bad because it makes everyone randomly lose a follower from their bag permanently, unless it's one of your starting followers, in which case it survives, you're lucky, it goes back in the bag. Now, the next phase is census, and this actually has to do with the farmer tracks. Now, there's all these different farmer tracks, and I'd actually set this up for a previous filming example that I'd done. But there's all these different tracks representing all these different followers, and this is the only one that happens right now that you have to worry about. Essentially, as you move up these tracks, when it gets to census time, whoever is in first place during the census is going to gain a coin. Whoever is in last place is going to lose a coin. If there's a tie for either first or last, respectively, then nothing happens to either of those groups of people. And there's no gaining coins if there's a tie for first, and there's no losing coins if there's a tie for last. Phase 3 is actually drawing the followers from your bag, and Phase 4 is planning with them. That's actually putting your followers out on the board onto the different action spaces that you want. In the beginning, you might only be able to activate one action, but as the game progresses and you get more followers and you're drawing more followers, you're going to be able to activate more than one action at a time, always in the same way by putting the appropriate followers on the appropriate spaces. And then the next phase is the meat of the game, and that is actually activating your actions. And how this works is that starting with the start player, every player is going to activate one action, and it's going to keep going around until you choose to pass. If you pass, that means you have no other actions that you either want to do or can do, and then you're just out of the round. The other players get to keep taking their actions until they have no actions left, and then that's going to go to the next phase, which is actually handling the event. Now, activating an action simply means whatever space you loaded up with the appropriate amount of followers, you activate that action if you want to, and then you immediately put the followers back into your bag, signifying that that action has been used. Let's go through what all of them do. So some of these are simply activating the different action spots on the main board that are corresponding to the different types of followers. So if you activate the village, you can get a boatman, a craftsman, or a trader. If you get the farmhouse, you get a farmer. If you get the castle, you get a knight. If you activate the university, you're going to get a scholar. And if you activate the monastery, you're going to get a monk. Now, the monk, I'll just tell you right now, is really cool. He has no special action track associated with him. What the monk is a wild. If you're using him on any of the basic action spaces, you can use him in place of any other type of worker, but not vice versa. If there's a space that specifically calls for a monk, you have to have a monk. The other spaces, in addition to letting you take one of the, if available, followers from the stack and putting into your bag, also has a different effect. So for the farmer, I half explained this already. When you take the farmer action, you move your cube. In addition to taking the follower disc, you move your cube up a space on the track. Also, in addition to helping you with the census, you immediately gain the good depicted at the top of the space that you just landed in. Now, if you take the craftsman action, you're going to take a craftsman follower, and you're going to get to take a technology tile. Technology tiles are these little gear things here. And what they do, you actually can put these onto your player board in any spot that is not a monk. You're never allowed to put this on a monk spot, but you can put it on any other space, limited to one technology tile. Sorry, over here. Limited to one technology tile per action space in the game, or per action area. And what this is that space is always considered to be occupied from then on. So in this case, if I want to build the guild hall action, which is building trading posts, if I put it on the farmer, I would never, ever again need a farmer in order to activate the guild hall. I just have to put a craftsman and a knight here. Boom. I'm good to go. The only limitation here is that your first one has to be for a farmer, and again, you can never use it to replace monks anywhere. The next action is the trader action, and this is the other, probably one of the most complicated actions in the game, only because it's a whole other set of options. Essentially, the first time you move up to the one space here, you're going to get to take one of the level 1 building tiles and build it for yourself. After that, you can take either a level 1 or level 2. Now, those tiles, you actually get to physically look through the entire stack of the appropriate tiles and choose one to build, and then you put it next to your player board, and now that is a special action space that only you can use and that is unique to you. So for instance, the winery here, if you could put a farmer and a trader there, you get to take a wine tile. Or there's one for the tailor, which is for the brocades. Let's get one. The library is going to move you up the development track a couple of spots. The brewery is just going to get you some money, and see that one requires a monk, which is pretty powerful. And those are a lot of these different things. The sacristy is actually going to protect you from a negative event if you so desire. Then you get into level 2 tiles, and those can be significantly more powerful. The horse wagon is actually a more powerful version of the wagon, which I haven't explained yet because it's easier to activate. The depot is going to get you 5 victory points for unique sets of items that you have. The office gets you money for your trading posts, and so on and so forth. The point is, they all are your own personal action spaces that you can activate with your followers during the course of the game. They're usually much easier to activate than the other spaces and can give you some really interesting effects. And that's also in addition to taking the trader, of course. Then we go on to the boatman. The boatman is a lot easier to explain. You take a boatman tile, you move up on the track. Wherever you end up, you take that many coins as depicted at the top of the track. However, if you're the first person to get to the end of this track, you don't get any coins, but you get to take that citizenship tile for the end game scoring. The knight works the same way a lot as the boatman. Take the tile. The first one to get here is going to take the citizen. However, notice these numbers at the top of the first, second, third, fourth, and 6th spaces. Wherever your cube currently is, so you all start off on the 4, and then you move up to 5, and then possibly to 6, and so on. That's how many followers you get to draw from your bag every round. So the higher you are on the track, the more followers you're drawing, which means theoretically more actions for you to use every round. Lastly, for the character tile actions, you have the Scholar. When you move up on this track, you also move up a number of spaces on the development track equal to the number at the top of each of those spaces. You physically take your cube, move it down the track. The star is going to be for end game scoring, like I mentioned before. The first person to get to any of the citizenship tiles takes those, also like I mentioned before. And whenever anyone crosses one of the money spots, they take that amount of coins. Now let's go back to our player board. There's 3 actions at the top of our player board that have to do with movement on this big map area. You have the ship, the wagon, and the guild hall. The ship and the wagon are kind of self-explanatory. You're essentially going to move your merchant over either a waterway or a roadway, depending on whether it's the ship or the wagon. You will physically pick up, if you activate that space, you physically, and then on the later turn you activate it, or you plan it, then you activate it. Physically pick up your meeple and move it along the appropriate route to the next city. It goes down the entire road or waterway. If there are goods, which is going to be the case at the beginning of the game, along that route, you pick one of them to put into your supply. Usually you're going to take the one that's worth more points, unless you're trying to get sets. Now, the guild hall action has to do with this board as well. Essentially, if you activate that spot, you're going to put out one of your trading stations, which, as I mentioned, is really useful for end game scoring. Now, most of the spots on the board can only have one trading station from any player. So first come, first served. Whoever puts one there first gets to keep that spot as a trading post spot. However, that does not apply to Orléans. Every player can have exactly one trading station in Orléans. Last 2 spots I need to talk about are these little sequestered ones in the center of your player board. First is the Scriptorum. This is just a way for you to get up on the development track in another way. Very inefficiently, though, you only move up 1 spot for activating that spot with a knight and for the scholar. And lastly, you have the Town Hall. The Town Hall lets you put either 1 or 2 followers there, and you still get to activate it. It's the only spot where you still get to activate it if you only put 1 there, unless it's one of the actual single space spots. Anyways, and the reason why it has a little rainbow thing here with all the different colors is that you can put any follower you want in that space except for your starting followers. The reason for that is that by going on those spaces, you're committing them to go on a pilgrimage here to the town hall or whatever it is. I'm not sure entirely what thematically this is supposed to represent. But this whole area here, there's a couple things going on here. First, if you decide to send a follower away, let's say I sent a knight away using the town hall action, I could put the knight on any of the spaces on the board and I get the reward at the top of that space. It might be coins, it might be an extra space up on the development track, and that's pretty much it. However, when the last spot of a whole grouping here is filled up, whoever put in that last follower gets to take the citizenship tile from that space. So whoever put the 4th meeple, or the 4th follower in this spot is going to take this citizenship tile as well as whatever the 2 coins that they would normally get for that. So in a sense, this is actually the culling thing for this game, how deck builders usually have a culling mechanism. This is how you can get rid of unwanted followers from your deck, but also get a reward in return. And that's pretty much it for the actions, other than a bunch of different random building tiles from the trader tiles. But once everyone has passed and they're out of actions for the round, one way or the other, then you go on to resolving the event, whatever that might be, good or bad, and then you go to the end of round cleanup, which very simply means the start player token is going to pass to the next player in line. Then you start all over again, flipping over an event, and then drawing followers and planning and taking all of your actions. Oh, one thing I'll mention is that when you plan for actions during the round, you can do it simultaneously, and I do highly recommend that, but in certain specific circumstances where you need to make sure, like for instance, if you and your opponents or one or more opponents are competing on the merchant board to get certain goods or to build trading posts in certain ways or crowded up next to each other, then it can become critically important to do things in turn order. So that is something to note. But for the most part, for most of the game, you can just plan stuff simultaneously because nobody's going to care and no one's going to be interacting with each other too much. But in any event, that is essentially Orléans, at least the deluxe edition, and also the normal edition plays the same way. You're trying to get as many points as you can via coins, goods, or a combination of trading stations, citizens, and progress on the development track to build up your little section of the French countryside. Now, let's get to my final thoughts. Well, most people who follow my channel know that I love deck building games, but I'm always a little bit iffy on sort of hardcore, heavy Euro games. I am very happy to say that Orléans, which is a bag building game, but essentially the same premise as a deck building game, is amazing. I love it. This is one of the best games I have played all year. I had actually played the previous version of this game, the original version of it, much earlier in the year, and thought, wow, this is really good. And now with the deluxe edition, I mean, now it looks amazing. Now the actual components match up to the gameplay with these nice wooden discs as opposed to the flimsy cardboard discs. Everything looks nice and blinged out. I will say, I still don't like the artwork very much, like on the cover, and the board looks a little bit muddy. Things like that are your individual player boards, at least. Although the graphic design is nice and clear, it does look like a very nice game when everything is laid out, especially with the new wooden bits. So, not totally happy with the artwork, but you will forget about it quickly is probably the nicest thing that I can say about it. But everything else, as far as the production value, works very, very well. It's not explicitly stated in the rulebook that I noticed, but what you have to do with, see, the previous version, there were wooden tiles for the goods that you literally just flip to their other side and then shuffled around. Now, to shuffle the wooden goods, and by the way, all of the original components, the cardboard, are in the box if you don't want to use them, but if you want to use the nice wooden good tokens, you have to sort of put them in a bag and then shuffle them out that way. But other than that small annoyance, everything else works very, very well, component and presentation-wise. It's fairly themeless, or at least the theme is pretty disconnected from anything that you're doing in the game, because again, it's a bag building game. You're getting these different workers and you're putting them on different areas of the board, but you'll also quickly forget about that, because it's like, well, okay, I'm just going here, getting this token, going here, getting these points and coins and things like that. In the development track, it's like, what exactly does that represent? I guess technology in general. Things like that make the theme a bit hard to swallow, but I think, again, and I'll keep saying this, it's a testament to the gameplay itself that all these types of things that would normally annoy me in other games really fall to the background because the gameplay is so solid. Essentially, like I said, it is deck building, but it's not only that. When you take all of the different actions that are required, and first off, that's a whole fascinating thing, because in deck building games, if you want to keep using that as something to compare it to, you just play a bunch of cards down, get some currency, and then buy one of the cards, put it into your deck. In this particular case, for Orléans, you have to get specific cards, in this case workers, in order to activate the different actions on the board. So you have to be much more focused, like laser focused on what you want to do in the game in order to make it happen consistently. If you really always want to be making, more types of specific workers, like farmers, and like activating the village to get the choice of one of the 3 different types of followers, is what they're technically called, I should be calling them, then you want to focus on getting the type of people that's going to make that happen. The boatman and the craftsman and the trader. On the other hand, if you really want to be moving up the development track as quickly as possible, you really need to get be activating the action that lets you move up the development track. The mission, the university is what it's called. But for that, you're going to need the traders, and maybe you want to focus on buildings as well, but that's going to require you to specifically to take that trader action, which requires you to have, again, certain tokens. So you can't just be willy-nilly buying cards. It's not like a traditional deck builder in that sense. You need to have a plan as to what you want to do. If you want to focus on going out onto the board and getting all as many goods as possible and building outposts, you need knights, you need farmers, you need all of these different things, and that's the thing. Depending on what you want to focus on, you need specific followers, and I love that idea because it gives it much more of a strategic bent instead of just like tactically like, oh, that's the best card I could possibly buy, let me just take that now, I'm sure it'll work out for me. No, you specifically have to choose what you think is going to be best for you at that time. You can go the technology route and hope that by alleviating your need for certain tokens, that's going to expedite your engine quite a bit, but of course, you don't know that you're going to be having to activate that every single time. For instance, if you put a technology tile, the gears, on one of your worker spots, the ones that's going to get you more followers, maybe at a certain point in the game that's not going to be as beneficial to you, but you can't move it. It's there forever, and you can only have, I think, 5 of them during the total course of the game if you focus on that action. So perhaps it would have been better off to load up like the ship, wagon, and guild hall spots instead. You have to make these kind of decisions from turn to turn. It's also very interesting that as far as the follower spots, when you take one of them, it's not only, hey, I get this dude, I'm also moving up on one of these tracks that gives me different things. You can go the boatman route and get a bunch of money. Always good to have money. Or you could go up, again, on the craftsman track, which gets you the technology. That's always fantastic. Or the knights, which is like, hey, now I can draw more from my bag. Always a good thing, but which one's going to be more beneficial to you? If you feel like, well, I can't do the number of actions I want to do, I don't have a problem with the number of followers that I have, you want to go for the knights. Things like that. Or maybe it's better for you to go for technology, and then you don't need to have as many followers. There's this give and take in the game as to what you want to do and how you want to go about doing it that I found really, really enjoyable. Now, this game does have a sort of feed your people type mechanism in the sense of the event tiles, which are just mainly a way to change things up slightly every round. I found these to be just where they needed to be. They're not as restrictive as other games that are really, really punishing, like in a game like Trajan, but on the other hand, they are a thing. They are something that you should try to focus on, especially for even the good ones. For instance, if you know that the tiles that are going to be coming up are ones that give you extra coins for your trading posts, and you consider that you might want to take the trading post action anyways, as each person should dabble in, you might want to expedite the production of those, knowing that 3 of them will come out during the course of the game. On the other hand, if you know that the tiles are going to come out that are going to penalize you for having more goods for every set of 3 goods that you have, either you may not want to go that route. It's not a huge point spread difference, but again, there's 3 tiles that are going to come out during the course of the game. Or you might want to set yourself up to not worry about getting as many goods until the later portions of the game and see how many of those tiles already come out. So it is a big deal, but it's never crippling. It's never totally game-changing. It's something that you can work on towards part of your strategy. The buildings are a very interesting thing in the game because when I first played the game, I thought, oh, well, I have to get some awesome buildings and some awesome extra spaces that are going to really give me an edge over the other players. But then one of the games I played, I completely ignored it and did awesomely because I was doing other things. But I still think they're a fascinating addition to the game because some of them are incredibly powerful. Being able to make some of your workers universally useful or to just increase their power, to give you extra opportunities to move up on the development track or be able to prevent any kind of negative things happening from the events. There's all these game-breaking types of things going on with those buildings, with the trader buildings. And again, I love it when a game makes you feel distinct and different from the other players. And this game has that all over in spades. Not only from those buildings, but also from the followers that you can gain as well, tailoring them to your play experience and the different strategy that you want to do. And wow, it's so interesting. And every time that I've explained this game, it's just more and more stuff unfolds. It's almost a bit too much all at once because it's like, okay, let me explain how the followers thing works. Okay, now let me explain how every single area on your player board works. Okay, now let me explain how this other board works that has you moving your merchant around to get different goods, which is an awesome thing. But it's like a whole other system of the game. Oh, and then the I always forget the proper name of it, but like the guild, the town hall board, where you will you can get rid of your people. This is the deck building culling part of the game where you can get rid of tokens that you maybe don't want anymore, or you're getting near the end of the game and you're like, okay, I feel like I can get better benefits if I go here. That's a whole other interesting thing. And hand in hand with that, I think the game plays very well at almost every player count. 2, I tried once and it was like, okay, it's okay. I think it's better with at least 3 or 4. The deluxe edition lets you play up to 5. I think that might be a bit too much. I think 3 or 4 is the sweet spot here. But it is interesting that, relating this back to the town hall, with less players, that area of the board of the game state is pretty different because it doesn't fill up as much and there's not as much competition for people to be the last one to put a tile out on one of those spaces. That might only happen right near the end. Whereas I think with other player counts, higher player counts, 4 or 5, you could make that a whole strategy and to be like, who's going to be the first one to claim one of these and go for those citizens, because those citizens are awesome if you've really been tending to getting the development track going and also getting your trading post going as well. That can be a huge swing of points. I think that might be one of the things that you can't totally ignore if you want to be doing totally well in the game. And it is fun competing for those citizens on the different tracks that get it to you for free if you're the first person to get there. I could go on and on about this game, but I'll stop here and just say that this is an amazing game. It really is. It's solidly designed. The new deluxe edition looks fantastic despite the iffy artwork, but I tell you, the warts that this game does have, as far as, you know, it is at least random because it is a bag building, deck building game, so there is some randomness there. The artwork is not that great, and it does, well, I don't know. I can't even think of that many really awful things about the game. It is so good. I'm super impressed with this game. I'm really eager to see what this design team can come out with next, and I want to try the expansion. I know there's an expansion too that is supposed to be very good, so I can't wait for that. I will be looking forward to playing more and more Orléans, and I give it my highest recommendation. Check it out. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.